Production from tight ends has been hit and miss in the Seahawks offense in recent years. Will that change now that Klint Kubiak's in town calling the plays? We're going to be diving into our latest training camp preview here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Blue Friday by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it, whether you're tuning in from Bakersfield, California, or Austin, Texas. A special thanks to each and every one of you. We are going to continue our training camp preview. I mean, it feels like training camp's basically here, but we've got a few more position groups to dive into. We're going to play one of our favorite games here for Blue Friday with a number of Seahawks-related topics heading towards the start of camp. And we are getting close to the conclusion of our 90-man countdown. We've got numbers 12 through 9. Yes, our numbers got messed up a little bit because there's been some changes in terms of the roster that made it we didn't have a round in 90. So we've got 12 through 9 coming up today. And so without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Seattle has made a concerted effort to improve the personnel it has at tight end the last several seasons. They've traded for Noah Fant. He was part of the Russell Wilson deal. They went out and they drafted A.J. Barner. Last year, they signed Pharaoh Brown. They have consistently been trying to add pieces to that group, and yet the on-field production, whether you're looking at catch numbers, whether you're looking at run blocking grades, Nick, it has been fleeting at best in terms of consistency from this group. And I'm not going to blame the personnel for all of it. I do think the fact that you've had offensive coordinators that have not been able to maximize that position has been a big part of the problem. But that creates this big question here. Is 2025 the year the tight ends thrive for the Seattle Seahawks? With Klint Kubiak coming to town, he's only been an offensive coordinator for parts of 3 seasons in the NFL. But if you look at that track record, Nick, he has done a really good job of getting tight ends involved, including last year, Juwan Johnson with the Saints having over 500 receiving yards and earning himself a big extension in New Orleans as a result of what Klint Kubiak did in this system that has a lot of 2 and 3 tight end personnel groupings.
Well, you kind of read my mind there, Corbin, because I was looking at when the last time the Seahawks had a tight end with over 500 receiving yards. Now, Noah Fant had exactly 500 last year, but I'm talking over, so 501 or more. You had to go back to Jimmy Graham in 2017 to find the last Seahawks tight end to have more than 500 yards receiving. And this could also be a scenario where it's not necessarily where they're not thriving, but they might not put up these crazy gaudy numbers just by kind of the consequence of the offense. You know, that you maybe don't have a prolific tight end, but still have a very solid year offensively. Of course, the elephant in the room is what's going to go on with Noah Fant. Is he going to be a cap casualty? I think it's up to $9 million in cap savings or around there. And it's if he's released, and what do you use that cap space for at this point in the season is another thing. And A.J. Barner was a guy I was really excited to see last year, and I think he exceeded expectations. Again, the numbers weren't crazy sexy, but 4 receiving touchdowns, which was 4 more than Noah Fant had his entire Seahawks career until last year when he finally got in the end zone there at the end. And I think Barner offers a little bit of an upside as far as blocking and receiving. I think he's adequate at both. I don't think he's like elite in either one. But with this kind of offense, you do need adequate in both. And I think A.J. Barner fits that. Elijah Arroyo, of course, I think is more on the receiving tight end, kind of split wide kind of tight end of the tight end spectrum, more so than a nose to the grindstone, Zach Miller kind of types. I don't think he's going to be getting his jersey crazy dirty. I guess you don't really see that much anymore with the turf fields, which is another unfortunate consequence of these kind of artificial turfs. You don't get these linemen and tight ends with dirty, muddy jerseys as much anymore, which is unfortunate. I digress. But I think this is a year where, yes, the tight ends can thrive, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that has to manifest itself in crazy stats.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that you have 3 tight ends that I believe are going to be getting a ton of reps, that would suggest, if you're thinking it for initially, well, if they're giving a lot of 2 and 3 personnel groupings, well, that's more opportunities to get the football to these tight ends. And you don't have DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett eating up those targets anymore. But on the flip side, this is going to be an offense where the run game is going to be prioritized a lot more. So that by itself is going to take away some of the opportunities for tight ends to catch the football. And if you've got 3 guys that are going to be playing quite a bit, that's also going to make it that you don't necessarily have one tight end that is going to be getting the bulk of the targets. And so I don't know that you see that 500-plus receiving yard season from any of these tight ends this year. That doesn't mean that they can't be effective in the red zone, though. That, to me, that's where this idea of thriving comes into play. The Seahawks, it's only been 2 or 3 years ago, they had a season where they had 11 touchdowns from their tight ends. So they have had some success fairly recently of getting the tight ends the football in the red zone and making plays. That has eluded them, though, the last couple of years. It has not been near successful the last year with Shane Waldron, and certainly last year, tight ends. Noah Fant had 1 touchdown at the very end of the season. A.J. Barner was the more productive red zone threat with his 4 touchdowns. But this has not been a position group in recent years that they've been able inside the opposing 20 to really get involved. I think this is where you are going to see the Klint Kubiak effect in play here, because his offenses have typically been pretty rock solid in the red zone. And part of that has been getting the football to their tight ends as playmakers. Now, Juwan Johnson didn't have a ton of touchdowns last year, but he is a guy that has shown in the past that he can do that. I think when you look at what the Seahawks have at the tight end position, Noah Fant's got the tools to be a red zone machine. It just has not happened with the offenses the last couple of years. I think that's something that Klint Kubiak's going to be looking to do. Barner's already shown he's got potential there. And the X factor here is Elijah Arroyo, a guy who has not had a ton of end zone production until last year. Some of that was injuries, but he is such a silky smooth athlete with really soft hands that I think Klint Kubiak's going to be trying to find ways to get the ball to him. And I think we have to also mention, Sam Darnold was pretty darn good in the red zone last year. And I think that the tight ends could be a big part of continuing that success for him. So when I'm looking at this from a success lens, what is thriving? It isn't 1,000-yard season from a tight end. That's not going to happen. But I could see you having 3 tight ends that have over 250 receiving yards and have a much better touchdown output. And, oh, by the way, they can mix and match how they use these guys in the blocking game, because I think even Elijah Arroyo, if you got him in the slot and you're getting him up against corners and some safeties, that I think you can make him a functional blocker. He's not going to be an inline guy, but I think Klint Kubiak's going to know how to mold this offense to the strengths of his blockers, which those are the things I'm looking at as far as what makes this group is thriving and why I'm optimistic about this group. It's not that I'm expecting a bunch of inflated numbers. That's just not going to happen in this offense with what I'm expecting Seattle is going to be doing, getting back to running the football.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about red zone touchdowns versus, overall just accumulating yards. Last year, 5 touchdowns total for the tight ends, 4 from Barner.
They got to have more than that.
Got to have more than that. I would say, I think it was 10 they had, or 11, like you mentioned, in 2022. I think anywhere between 7 and 9 would be really nice for this group. 3 apiece would be really great. Just kind of spread the wealth. Again, these guys have different skill sets, but and can we get maybe Noah Fant, if he truly is going to be a part of this offense moving forward this year, can we get him more than 1 touchdown, like the last buzzer beater of touchdowns, pretty much? Can maybe he could get 2 or 3 more? And so I think, I don't know if you want to set a goal here for tight ends touchdowns. I'd say 7 or 8 would be really nice from this group. And what we talked about last week with the safeties and kind of the 3 main safeties that kind of bring something a little different to the table. I kind of see that a little bit with these 3 tight ends, where Noah Fant has a bit more of the Elijah Arroyo skill set, but I think he's got a bit of a thicker frame where he could hold his own a bit more of a blocker than Elijah Arroyo at this point. Arroyo, I think of the 3, clearly the elite, sleek athlete, and Barner, I think, is the higher upside as far as a blocking tight end, and a bit of a blend of the 2 things that you want in a tight end. So all three of these guys offer different skill sets, different looks. So if you got two or even all three of them in the red zone packages of some kind, put Jalen Milroe and all three tight ends in a red zone package, a goal line package, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, well, listen, on Madden, I'd be doing that. We'll see if Klint Kubiak is actually going to do it in a game. And listen, I don't think it's as far-fetched as some of the virtual stuff that you could talk about. I think that absolutely could be something that we would see Klint Kubiak do, because he did some similar things in New Orleans last year with that offense, especially when they had some injuries at their other skill positions, and they leaned more on those specialty sub packages. When we come back, it's Blue Friday. We love to play games on Friday going into the weekend. What's the Word is coming back. We're going to dive into some statements and maybe make up some vocabulary here as we head into training camp next week. Don't go away. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery apps. Now I'm budgeting a little bit smarter and saving more money when other expenses pop up in my life. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances. You can track your spending, and you can even plan long-term goals. That's something that I've been doing a lot on the app, is looking at what I want to do financially here in the next couple of years and building a plan for that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDINNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDINNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined for today's show by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. As we do each and every Blue Friday, we like to play games. We like to have some fun to close out the week, and we're going to bring out one of our old standbys, one of our favorites. What's the Word? And Nick, I'll be reading off a statement with a blank in it, and you and I are going to be tasked with filling that blank. And it could be real words, or what makes this game so much fun, you can come up with phrases, or maybe you and I decide to test the Merriam-Webster dictionary and come up with our own words. So that's what makes this so much fun. Without further ado, let's get to it. Our first statement here, Nick, what's the Word? Mike Macdonald's usage of 3 safety sets will blank the Seahawks defense.
Well, I think using these 3 safeties will Alahomora this Seahawks defense, using Harry Potter, the unlocking charm. Get past a big dungeon door or a big lock on that big scary door or that mysterious door. Alahomora was the charm you'd use, and this could possibly unlock just a next level of the Seahawks defense we discussed last week, with just the different skill sets these guys offer. Nick Manwari, kind of a bruiser linebacker type that also can hold his own in coverage. Kobe Bryant, more of a sleeker, smoother athlete, hybrid type to drop back in coverage and hold his own tackling. And Julian Love, a great center fielder as a free safety. And just being able to have that umbrella and just the chess pieces involved, wizard chess, perhaps, that this is going to unlock certain levels of the Seahawks defense, certainly under Mike Macdonald, we haven't seen before.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to say that Mike Macdonald's usage of 3 safety sets, hearkening the great George W. Bush, it will bolsterify the Seahawks defense. I had to do that. Look, this group is already really good before you add Nick Emanwari to the mix. And I talked about this some yesterday. I value everybody's opinion that goes down and sits down and watch the tape. I know there are some really good football analysts out there that have said that Nick Emanwari is raw. I just don't see it. Like when I've turned on the tape, I mean, raw would mean, well, this guy has all these physical tools, but he hasn't really put it together in the field. He was a unanimous All-American. This is a guy that is not just really fast and can jump out of a building. He uses those tools to make a lot of plays on the football field. Now, he's like any rookie. There's areas he's got to improve, but to call him raw, I think that is an incredible understatement about what this kid already does as a football player. So you put him in there with Love and Bryant, and I think DeAnthony Bell's going to get some snaps. I think they will do four safety sets. I think that is something Mike McDonald has done before in Baltimore. I think he will do it here in Seattle with the talent that he's got there. So you are bolsterifying an already really good defense. All right, our next one here. Ken Walker III will occupy the role of blank in Klint Kubiak's offense.
Well, my kids have gotten into some Michael Jackson music lately, so he'll occupy the role of smooth criminal in the offense. He'll operate with, that zone-heavy scheme. I could see him kind of being smooth with it, finding the holes and juking everybody out. There might be bloodstains on the carpet, proverbially with the turf there. And if there's maybe a safety or a linebacker with the name Annie and he gets in the end zone, he's going to have to ask him if he's okay, because he's going to juke him out of his shoes. And I just see him being a smooth operator, a smooth criminal, so to speak, in this offense. I do think it just fits him well. And you and I have kind of been talking it up. I think this is going to be a bit of I don't know if I want to call it a bounce back year, but maybe another level, or at least the rookie year level of Ken Walker.
Ken Walker III will occupy the role of Acme Roadrunner in Klint Kubiak's offense. If things play out the way that I think that they should, and that means that you have a healthy Ken Walker III, that's obviously the caveat here, but this offense just seems like it is a much better fit to me for his skill set than what Ryan Grubb was trying to do with him last year. And if it's playing out the way that I think it should, you're going to have opposing defensive coordinators that are going to be wishing they could get their hands on some Acme Dynamite, because that might be the only way that you're going to slow this guy down when he gets into creases in these zone schemes, particularly the wide zone runs. So you might be hearing some meat coming from the backfield when this guy gets the football, because I think that this offense, the system, is going to help create some more of those creases for him to really show off that 4.3 speed and his burst. Our third one here, what's the word? The current status of Seattle's right guard situation should be characterized as blank.
Well, it kind of feels like this way sometimes with the offensive line, so it should be characterized as Stranger Things-y. I think we're straight up in the upside down, man. Like, is Bryce Cable do the mind flayer? I don't know. I say that for two ways. One, I have no idea what the heck's going on. And two, it could be the depth chart itself could be flipped upside down. We don't know. Christian Haynes, I think, is the favorites, but, Anthony Bradford's had plenty of experience. Bryce Cable do that kind of wild card there. It could be totally flipped upside down with a strong camp from somebody or really weak camp from somebody else. It is straight up the upside down, and the interior line has been stuck in the upside down for far too long. Hopefully that can be remedied with some smart play. Hopefully they don't need a pack of teenagers to bail them out. But I do think that right now it's just straight up the upside down.
My word, what's the word here? The current status, Seattle's right guard situation should be characterized as cautiously unterrifying. Basically, what we've seen the last couple years, it has been terrifying what we have seen at that right guard position, the musical chairs and rotating through guys. So I am cautiously unterrified right now. Like I am feeling like maybe there could be a light at the end of the tunnel here. Christian Haynes, I think, is still the favorite there. I think John Benton wants him to go out and win that job. John Benton's got a really good track record with athletic guards of being able to get their play leveled out to where they are able to be really productive. I'm hoping that it can be Christian Haynes here. But Anthony Bradford, using a Pete Carrollism here, he looked a little bit svelte when I was out there for mandatory minicamp. I mean, he looks like he's lost a little bit of weight. He's trimmed down a little bit to be able to play in this system. So maybe we should be not forgetting about Anthony Bradford. Satawa Lamea, he didn't play any right guard in the offseason program, but he started the last 6 games. I think he's got the movement skills to be able to do this. So kind of go with what you said. Like, it does feel like everything's upside down, but there's options that I'm intrigued by working with John Benton. So I'm cautiously unterrified. All right, what's the word? Deciding not to extend Riq Woolen or Boye Mafe early should be viewed as a blank decision.
I'm going to totally just go off that. This is not a word. I'm sure it's a blackjacky decision. And if you ever played blackjack, if you're sitting there with maybe a hand of 16 or so, I'm not a huge gambling guy, but I've played some blackjack for fun. If you're sitting there with a 16, you might win by standing pat. But if you ask to hit and, the house draws a 6, you bust, and you're kind of out of luck. And I think with the house winning and you busting in this scenario is all of a sudden Riq Woolen has a Pro Bowl caliber season again, or Boye Mafe goes nuts with 10, 11, 12 sacks. And all of a sudden you really could have had him maybe on a discount, and now you got to pay the piper or let him go and watch him completely reach a new level with a different team. So it's a gamble for sure. Extending both of them would have been a gamble. I think we would have been talking either way had this been a gamble. That's kind of the nature of the business, but it's a blackjacky one because you have a decent hand here. I think you have a solid, hand that can go either way. But right now I think he's playing it close to the vest and not wanting to bust the hand there. So it's certainly one that can also blow up in your face. But right now I think it's a leaning on the smarter side of a gamble.
Deciding not to extend Riq Woolen or Boye Mafe early should be viewed as a wisely precarious decision. And talk about two words that don't belong together, but that's exactly summing up what you just said, though. I understand why John Schneider is going this route because Riq Woolen has had his inconsistencies. He's been benched briefly by two different head coaches. He has to show there's more consistency there. You don't want to throw $20+ million at a guy that you're worried, well, is he ever going to find that consistency? We know the flashes are there where this guy looks like a top 5 corner, but are we going to get the consistency to justify that? And Boye Mafe, I think you can say a lot of the same things. He's been good. Has he been great? Well, maybe at times, but we haven't seen the elevation of his game consistently to justify what pass rushers get paid. So there's a gamble. There's no question about it. That's where the precarious nature of this comes in. You could end up paying a lot more money down the line, but I think that it's wise not to throw all that money when you have reservations either. John Schneider blank by fully guaranteeing Nick Emanwari's contract. This is still a big talking point for a lot of Seahawks fans right now.
This is probably the one I struggle with the most, and it kind of turned into a sentence. It kind of felt like for me with the other 2 second round, I forget the names, Jaden Higgins and somebody else that got fully guaranteed money before Emanwari. He bought protection from the mob. That's kind of what it feels like by fully guaranteeing this, because obviously there's a bit of a standoff with the agents, maybe. Didn't want to disgruntle their prize second rounder, who they clearly viewed as a first rounder. I almost went with, they got to buy one, get one with the first round picks, because Nick Emanwari really is a first round talent, but they didn't really buy one, get one free because they have to pay for both first rounders. But and they clearly show a belief, and but also it seemed like there's a growing momentum to have this happen more and more. And so the Seahawks and John Schneider maybe didn't want to stand in the way, especially with one that was highly regarded as Nick Emanwari, and maybe it leverages a bit more on his side of things. So yeah, they kind of bought themselves into that club, that cool club with that they're fully guaranteeing second round picks. But I think that we can all agree Nick Emanwari probably should have been a first round pick anyway.
Yeah, look, this is why I'm going to use the verbiage that I'm using here. John Schneider embraced the unspectacular by fully guaranteeing Nick Emanwari's contract. Like I mentioned this on the show yesterday, like the writing's been on the wall since after the press conference. Like they were going to trade up in the first round to go get it. Like I don't think John Schneider's got any issue with fully guaranteeing a contract for a guy of this talent level and these upside traits that he brings on top of that. He has no issue, and it's not like this is a guy that's going to get an $80 million contract fully guaranteed. He's a second rounder. There's nothing spectacular about this. John Schneider's probably seeing people saying he caved in, and he's like, "Got caved in?" Like it's not really that big of a deal, in my opinion. So to me, he embraced the unspectacular. Real fast, our last one here. What's the word? Sam Darnold must blank to be an upgrade over Geno Smith.
Forgive the low-hanging fruits, because I'm sure this gets brought up every time people think of Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold must call the Ghostbusters. to be an upgrade over Geno Smith. And of course, if you know my reference that, he was quoted as a Jet saying, "I'm seeing ghosts out there," when he was really having trouble with pocket presence and kind of being jittery. He very much did not see ghosts last year. And I think what I've been saying most of the year is he doesn't need to be Vikings Sam Darnold. That was 100th percentile Sam Darnold. And the Jets and the Panthers, and that was maybe 50th percentile Sam Darnold. If the Seahawks can get 80th percentile Sam Darnold, I think that's going to be enough. And again, also not be the reason that they lose, because Geno Smith, as much as we enjoyed watching him play, sometimes he made those decisions. We're like, gosh, Geno, why? And sometimes he was the reason they won. Just so, especially Sam Darnold being someone fairly polarizing, not being the reason that they lose, and winning ball games, because winning really cures everything. So really the calling the Ghostbusters, kind of that means win ball games, because no one's going to ask questions.
For me, Sam Darnold must cool cat it up. Excuse me, I made up a word, so I butchered it. He must cool cat it up in the red zone to be an upgrade over Geno Smith. To me, that is the deciding factor here. If Geno Smith last year wouldn't have had all the red zone picks, who knows what ends up happening in terms of what Seattle pays him, or if he wants to stay in Seattle if they win a few more games. We don't know any of those things, but Sam Darnold was the much better red zone quarterback last year. He was much cooler and calm and collected in those situations. If he can do that again, that is what to me is the key. Because if you're scoring a lot more touchdowns, you're not getting those red zone turnovers. That might be the difference, winning 11, 12, 13 games this year versus being a middling around 500 squad. So that to me is the key for Sam Darnold. When we come back, we've got our 90-man countdown. We're down to numbers 12 through 9. Yes, we've got away from the zeros and the fives because the Seahawks decided to make a few roster moves and they got our list all screwed up. But we're going to get through 12 through 9 coming up next year on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Nick Lee. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. One thing I've always liked about our 90-man countdown, Nick, is that, it's in clusters of 5. We don't have to worry about having 1s, 2s, 3s, and not being a math guy, not having to worry about that. But look, the Seahawks always throw a wrench in it because they do make off-season moves, including signing Shaquille Griffin, some of the other stuff that they've done. And there are players that we talked about at the beginning of this countdown that are no longer on the roster. So because of that, we don't have that friendly 0 or 5 at the end in terms of the number of players that we're going to be discussing. So we are looking at 12 through 9 today. And I'm assuming there won't be any other moves, but who knows? Maybe Jadeveon Clowney's on a plane right now to Seattle. We don't know. But assuming there's no other moves, let's continue here. We're going to do 4 players here, 12 through 9. And we're going to start off with, in my opinion, the second biggest addition the Seahawks made during free agency. We're actually going to talk about both these guys in this segment, but DeMarcus Lawrence coming in. And I know a lot of Seahawks fans, you're looking at the age and the fact he's coming off a list fracture, which there's been some guys that have been at that stage of their career that they're just not the same when they come back. And that is an injury that can really mess with guys long-term. With that being said, before that injury, had 3 sacks in 3.5 games for the Dallas Cowboys. He was playing the best as a pass rusher that I had seen him play in probably 3 or 4 years. He's been a great run defender pretty much his entire career. Uchenna Nwosu starting the season on the pup. To me, this was a move that had to be made now when you consider where things are at and the fact that Adam Durde has coached him and those two are really close. He knows the expectations. Other young guys like Derek Hall, unprompted, have talked about this guy and the veteran presence that he is. If you can get what DeMarcus Lawrence did or close to it in those first 3.5 games last year, and you can extrapolate it over an entire season, this has a chance to be an extremely thrifty signing by the Seattle Seahawks when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. And let's address the elephant in the room. Like you mentioned, the Liz Frank injury. I've had a few of my favorite football players that have had their careers altered by that injury, or at least delayed or interrupted. Let's address the fact that this could be a diminished DeMarcus Lawrence. It could be. We don't know. He's certainly coming to Seattle in pursuit of a career renaissance, which I think is possible. And like you mentioned, the leadership thing is a huge with a somewhat younger group. You got, the Derek Hall, Boye Mafe, Byron Murphy, and those guys, getting him in the room with Leonard Williams and just true vets who have been there, got pelts on the wall, got all the whole package. Adding a guy like that to this group could prove invaluable. Even if he doesn't get the 9 to 11 sack kind of season, if he plays enough and provides enough juice and also provides that leadership aspect and helps other guys take another step that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have. That's kind of hard to put in a box score, but I can see him making that kind of impact. So, of course, you want him as fans. We definitely want him to produce those stats. And I can see an avenue where he does. And like you mentioned with Uchenna Nwosu being on the PUP list to start the season, it turns in. And can you imagine the panic that would be in the fan base if that PUP list news for Nwosu came out and they hadn't made an addition like DeMarcus Lawrence? There would be some true hand-wringing. And there still is a little bit. But like you mentioned, they could still add Jadeveon Clowney. But the fact that they had the foresight to get DeMarcus Lawrence with kind of in the back of their minds that it was likely that Nwosu was headed to the PUP list to start, really one of the better moves. And I know that Sam Darnold's going to get the headline just because he's the quarterback, and of course, but I think Lawrence, that's my favorite move the Seahawks have made so far.
Yeah, and then, of course, you have the Cooper Kupp edition as well. And, Sam Darnold, you could put him and Cooper Kupp up there in terms of obviously positional importance and what they do here for this offense. But I just think Lawrence is one of those guys that's he is a grizzled veteran that just plays blue collar. He is a dog. He's the kind of guy that Mike Macdonald just gravitates to. I think this is a great fit for him in the latter stages of his career to maybe have a few more really good seasons. And I think the same can be said for Cooper Kupp, because when you look at the offense he's played with in Sean McVay's land, with what Sean McVay brings to the table, when you look at how he has produced in that offense, there are a lot of carryovers to what is going to be done in Klint Kubiak's offense, because Kubiak is from that Shanahan tree. And guess what? Sean McVay, even though he delved into some of his own things off it, he is from that coaching tree as well. There's going to be some things that are mirroring what he did in Los Angeles that were so effective. And so for that reason, look, injuries have been the biggest issue. Can you keep him healthy? And he's an older player just like Lawrence. So, of course, the durability thing is going to be the big question mark that you have. What I don't have question marks about is his fit in this offense, though. I think with the timing-based stuff that is going to be done in this offense, getting the football out of Sam Darnold's hands, having a guy who isn't a burner, he's never been a burner. Cooper Kupp's game has never been beating guys downfield, but he wins as a route runner, and he is going to give you that security blanket. He's going to be a guy that can consistently move the chains and rack up high volume numbers as a pass catcher. To me, this is the offense that really needs guys like that. It is a really good fit for him. And the fact he's going to get 2 games against his former team, I think there's going to be that chip, whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. That chip is going to be there for him. I just really like the fit. As long as you can keep him healthy, there's always risk when you do that with older players. But I really like him in this offense that Klint Kubiak runs with some of the carryover to Sean McVay's system.
Yeah, when he was signed, the initial, frankly, lazy kind of analysis was, well, Jackson Smith and Jigba was a slot guy. He's a slot guy. How's this going to work? I think it's going to work wonderfully. I have high expectations for this. And there is some certain similarities with Lawrence because, veteran with that's coming off a bit of a checkered injury history, seeking a little bit of a career renaissance after leaving a team they've been with for a long time. And if you dive deep into the numbers, Cooper Kupp still had it a little bit last year at 1.88 yards per route run. Last year was 32nd among wide receivers. So top 32 wide receiver in that regard last year. Again, I think he's missed 18 games over the last 3 years total. So he's that of course is going to come into play. But if you can get a 15 to 17 game season, 15 plus game season out of Cooper Kupp with, 85% of what he was, that's a huge win, I think. And just again, like with Lawrence, the mentor factor as well with the younger group of receivers you have. I mean, some of these guys that are really coming into the system, the Torrey Horton and Ricky White, straight up grew up watching Cooper Kupp. I mean, even though that was only 3, 4, 5 years ago. And yeah, you have the kind of the DeMarcus Lawrence move on the offensive side. So the veteran guy looking for a renaissance that still might have it. This is, again, a bit of a gamble, but a really high reward kind of gamble. If Cooper Kupp can get you any semblance of what he was, even it's like that country song, I ain't as good as I once was, but can Cooper Kupp be as good once as he ever was, I think is the question.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think when you look at the next two guys, I mean, we could just call this the what if in terms of injuries cluster, because Cooper Kupp's been banged up. DeMarcus Lawrence missed a big chunk of last year. And the next two guys on our list, Ken Walker III missed 6 games last year, and he's had a lot of these really nagging, annoying. They're not severe enough that he needs to go in IR, but they are bad enough that he's going to miss a couple of games. Then you don't know if he's going to be quite the same when he comes back type ordeals. Those injuries are obnoxious, and he's had a bunch of them the last couple of years. And Uchenna Nwosu, he's had the significant injuries. I mean, he's had a torn pec. He has had a knee sprain that required surgery. Last year he literally comes back 20 snaps against the Giants, and then he's got a tear in his quad. Like, he has just had all these like crazy things that have happened in the last 2 years. And we know that the knee sprain came on an illegal block by Wyatt Teller, so you feel like that was avoidable. So he has just had a lot of bad luck. Ken Walker III, he maybe to the same extent. He's had a bad offensive line in front of him. It's left him hanging out to dry. He suffered some injuries as a result. For the Seahawks to reach their potential, you got to have both these guys playing at the level they're capable of and staying on the field. I think if you can have a 15-game season from Ken Walker III in this offense, I expect the line's going to be quite a bit better. Maybe they're not a top 15 offensive line, but they're going to be better than we saw last year. He's going to have more creases to work with. Walker can get back over 1,000 rushing yards. It can give you double-digit touchdowns. I mean, you could have a really big season from him going into the final year of his contract. And I think when you look at Uchenna Nwosu, he's playing for his NFL future, not just in Seattle. I mean, if he has another year with injuries, teams are not going to be rushing to the door to want to sign this guy. The Seahawks are not going to keep him, and it's unfortunate because when he's healthy, he showed at the end of last year he can still play at a really high level. But he is playing for not just his future in Seattle, but his future in the NFL this year. If he can go out and be healthy with the other guys they have around him, that has the chance to be one of those real needle movers for where this football team is going to be going into this next season.
To kind of oversimplify, if you could just wish and genie upon one stat that to give the Seahawks this year to really ensure success, I punched my ticket for 1,000+ yards rushing for Ken Walker, just because that would be symptomatic of so many things going well. The offensive line's probably doing pretty well. He's healthy, and if the Seahawks are running the ball with that kind of defense, they're going to win some ball games. So I think that fulfilling that question mark of his health and kind of the run game, if I could just guarantee nothing else is guaranteed except for a 1,000-yard rushing season from Ken Walker. That would, I think, be just that would kind of the stone would roll downhill, so to speak, of getting the Seahawks probably into the playoffs. I think it might be that simple. I know it's not, but if you just fast forward to January and all I'm looking at is the rushing totals for Ken Walker and he's got over 1,000 yards, I'm betting a lot of money the Seahawks made the playoffs. I mean, I'm just am. So I think he's can be that influential. Like I mentioned in that previous segments, he's going to work very smoothly, I think, in this new offense with Klint Kubiak. Again, of course, with both of these guys. All the guys we talked about, like you said, it's been kind of an unintentional theme of this segment is health. And if Uchenna Nwosu's healthy, you add him alongside DeMarcus Lawrence and those guys. I mean, that's a while unspectacular, star-studded kind of edge rushing room, I think could be one of the deeper, more underrated edge rushing rooms in all of football, health willing.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky, Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at Nick Lee 51. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back on Monday, going to be talking offensive line. It's the most important position group for this team to really get to the next level and get back to the playoffs. Rob Rang and I'll be diving in on that, and we will open up a pre-training camp mailbag. So make sure to be sending those questions our way on social media. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.